So we're back and ready to dive deep into Trump's second term.
Second term already.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
Feels like just yesterday we were talking about
the midterms.
Yeah, the midterms, exactly.
It seems like a lifetime ago.
It really does.
Different world now.
And, we've got a stack of news here from AP and Fox.
Oh, yeah.
Detailing all the day one happenings, inauguration, executive orders, reactions, you name it.
A whirlwind.
Totally a whirlwind. And we want to unpack it all, not just what Trump is doing, but
why?
exactly why it matters, what it all might mean
For
us, for everyone, for the next 4 years. So
it's going to be a wild ride.
yeah, buckle up. So let's start with that inauguration itself.
Okay.
Holding the Capitol Rotunda, kind of hard not to think about.
January 6th.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Yeah, a loaded choice of venue for sure.
Yeah.
It's the very place where, democracy was flattened back then.
Right, and now it's
Peaceful transfer of power.
right.
But then you have Biden, preemptively pardoning Dr. Fauci, General Milei, members of the January 6th committee.
Like right before leaving office.
Yeah, it speaks volumes, I think, about the anxiety surrounding this second term.
Yeah, I think you're right. And pretty much everyone was there.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton, Barack Obama.
Smiling Joe Biden.
Right, shaking Trump's hand.
Far cry from
Totally different from 2021.
when Trump skipped Biden's inauguration.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey,
A lot of
man.
world leaders, too. Argentina's president, Javier Milei. Italy's premier, Giorgia Meloni. China's vice president, Han Zheng.
You don't usually see that kind of international presence.
Not really.
Raises questions about, what kind of global alliances Trump might be forging this time around.
Makes you wonder, right? And then there's the tech world. Elon Musk, Zuckerberg, Bezos, Pichai.
The whole gang was there.
They were all there front and center.
Especially Musk beaming,
Yeah, he was front row, right?
like a proud father.
Totally.
Yeah,
And yeah, that relationship is definitely one to watch.
for sure.
But let's talk about what Trump actually did on day one.
Okay, let's get into it.
The guy didn't waste any time.
No, he didn't. He hit the ground running with that executive power.
Right. First things first, a wave of pardons.
Yeah, around 1,500 people involved in the January 6th attack were pardoned,
1,500. Wow.
including those convicted of assaulting police officers.
That's
A lot.
a lot of people and pretty serious offenses.
Yeah, and he also commuted the sentences of 14 others, including leaders of the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys.
So those are the guys who
Yeah, who
Yeah.
were, really at the forefront of the January 6th attack.
right. So this is
Controversial, to say the least.
definitely controversial. Some are saying it undermines the rule of law, sends a dangerous message about
Accountability.
right, exactly. But others are saying it's an attempt to
Heal divisions.
to kind of move on from that turbulent period.
Put it behind us.
But the fact that it happens so early on, like day one,
He sets the tone.
it really does. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
this is how he's approaching,
Justice.
justice and the rule of law.
Exactly.
And then, of course, there's the executive.
Oh, yeah, he went on a spree with
But he's
this.
trying to undo.
As much of Biden's agenda as possible.
Yeah, it felt like a complete 180.
Absolutely. It's like he had this checklist and he was determined to tick off every item.
I think you're right.
So U.S. is out of the Paris Climate Agreement again. Tariffs are back on goods from Canada and Mexico, this time a whopping 25%.
25%. That's a huge jump.
It is the TikTok ban gone. And 51 former national security officials who questioned Hunter Biden's laptop, they had their security clearances revoked.
Wow. Okay. That's a
lot to unpack.
lot to unpack. Each one of those actions has
Massive implications.
huge implications. So let's break it down a bit. First, the Paris Agreement withdrawal. What does this mean for the environment, for global climate change efforts?
What's not a good sign
Right.
for international cooperation on climate change.
Not at all.
It's a blow to environmentalists and, a potential setback for global efforts to curb emissions.
It's basically saying,
America first.
right, America first, even if it hurts the planet.
Yeah, basically. And then you've got those tariffs on Canada and Mexico, 25%. Like you said, that's a huge jump.
What are the likely consequences there?
It's hard to say for sure, but history tells us that trade wars can be costly.
For everyone involved.
Exactly. We could see retaliatory tariffs from Canada and Mexico, higher prices for consumers, and disruptions to supply chains.
So basically,
A potential economic earthquake.
and what about the TikTok ban reversal? I thought there were serious concerns about data security and
Chinese influence.
right.
There were, and they haven't gone away. This could reignite those debates, put pressure on TikTok to address those concerns.
So is this a sign that Trump is maybe softening his stance on China?
Hard to say. It also raises questions about his stance on Chinese tech companies in general and, their role in the U.S. economy.
Okay, so a lot of unknowns there.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole security clearance thing. I mean, that's a pretty aggressive move against people who essentially disagreed with him during the campaign.
It's a highly unusual move. It's
Yeah.
raising concerns about, the potential chilling effect on free speech and dissent.
It's like he's saying,
You're either with me or against me.
yeah, and if you're against me,
There will be consequences.
it's okay. So definitely sending a message there. So let's shift gears for a moment and talk about immigration. This is an area where we've already seen a major policy change. Remember the CBP-1 app?
Oh, yeah.
It was designed to allow migrants to schedule appointments to apply for asylum, and it was processing nearly 1 million people.
It was a big deal.
It was. And it was abruptly cut down on Inauguration Day.
Yeah. Stranding a lot of people with canceled appointments.
So what happens now to those families who were waiting, hoping for a chance at a new life in the U.S.? What are the alternatives for people seeking asylum?
That's a big question. The CPP-1 app, despite its flaws, it provided a degree of order and control over the asylum process.
All right.
Shutting it down could lead to, a return to more chaotic and dangerous situations at the border.
It's like going back to
Square one.
Yeah, and not in a good way. We could see a surge in illegal crossings, more families separated, increased pressure on Border Patrol resources.
It's a worrying situation for sure. And it really highlights, the impact of these policy changes on real people's lives.
Yeah, the human cost of these decisions.
Yeah.
It's something we can't forget.
Absolutely. But before we move on, there's one more policy shift I want to touch on: space exploration.
Okay, so Trump is still all about sending astronauts to Mars.
Yeah, he seems to be doubling down on that goal.
It's interesting, on one hand, you have Trump, the brash, unpredictable leader.
Right.
And on the other hand, you have Musk, this tech visionary.
And they seem to be finding common ground in their shared ambition to push the boundaries of space exploration.
It's like a bit of an odd couple.
Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily expect them to be allies, but there they are.
And Trump publicly endorsed Musk's goal of sending astronauts to Mars, and Musk, in turn, spoke at a post-inauguration rally praising Trump's leadership.
It's a fascinating dynamic.
It really is. So what does this mean for the future of space exploration? Will we see a renewed focus on scientific advancement, or will it be more about, national prestige and economic opportunity?
It's probably a combination of both. Space exploration has always been about pushing the limits of human knowledge and capability, but it also carries significant political and economic weight.
Right. It's a way to show the world.
Who's in charge?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And with Trump and Musk seemingly aligned on this issue, it's possible we could see a significant acceleration of space exploration efforts in the coming years. So a new space race.
Potentially.
It's a bold vision and one that raises a lot of questions. But for now, let's step back from the stars and bring our focus back to Earth. Because there's one more aspect of Trump's return that we need to address.
You're talking about his rhetoric.
Exactly his way. With words, his knack for capturing attention, for stirring controversy. It's one of the things that makes him such a fascinating and
Polarizing.
polarizing figure.
And it's something that continues to be a source of concern for many. Even though he won the 2024 election, he's still making claims about the 2020 election being rigged.
It's like he can't let it go.
And his speeches are peppered with inflammatory language aimed at his opponents, and he seems to relish in veering off script to launch into unscripted attacks.
Like he thrives on the
chaos.
Yeah, the chaos and the conflict.
His supporters see it as a sign of his authenticity and his willingness to fight for what he believes in.
Right. They love that he's not afraid to
speak his mind.
Exactly. But his critics see it as a sign of instability, recklessness, and even a disregard for democratic norms. So the big question is, how will his rhetoric shape the political landscape in this second term? Will it escalate divisions and lead to more polarization, or will he find a way to unite the country behind his vision?
That's the million-dollar question. Only time will tell.
Well, it was quite a first day back in the Oval Office.
You can say that again.
We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still much more to explore. Stay with us as we dive deeper into the potential impact of Trump's policies and what it all means for the future.
It's going to be a fascinating ride.
Buckle up.
Okay, so let's unpack some of these policy shifts.
Yeah, where do we even begin?
Let's start with that economic bombshell.
The tariffs.
Yeah, the tariffs on Canada and Mexico.
25% across the board. I mean, everything from avocados to auto parts is going to get hit.
It's a big deal.
It feels a lot like Trump's trade wars from his first term.
There are definitely echoes of that approach. His argument is that these tariffs will protect American jobs, American industries from unfair competition.
Right.
But the question is, at what cost?
Because last time it seemed like everyone ended up paying more.
Exactly. And it didn't really solve the underlying problems.
So what's different this time?
Well, for one thing, the global economic landscape is much different now.
Right, we're still recovering from the pandemic.
Exactly. And there's all this instability in Europe.
So it's a much more
Precarious situation.
Yeah, and throwing tariffs into the mix just adds to the
Uncertainty.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's the question of retaliation.
Oh, yeah. Canada and Mexico aren't going to just sit back and absorb this hit.
So we could end up with a tit-for-tat escalation,
Most likely.
which hurts businesses and consumers on all sides.
Exactly. So you could end up with more expensive groceries, cars, appliances, basically everything.
And then there's the impact on businesses that rely on those cross-border supply chains.
Huge disruptions, potential delays, shortages. It could be a mess.
So it's a risky gamble, to say the least.
It is. It's a high-stakes game of economic chicken.
Okay, well, let's move on to something a bit more digital.
All right. What do you have in mind?
The TikTok saga.
Ah, yes. The never-ending saga.
So Trump lifts the ban, which
Yeah.
was all about data security and Chinese influence. But haven't those concerns kind of faded away?
I wouldn't say they faded away.
People seem to have moved on to other platforms.
True. But the underlying concerns about TikTok's data practices and its ties to the Chinese government, those haven't gone away.
So is this just Trump admitting defeat?
Maybe. Or maybe he sees TikTok as a potential tool for something else.
Like what?
Well, think about it. It's a hugely popular platform with a massive reach.
Especially among young people.
Exactly. So it could be a powerful tool for disseminating information, influencing public opinion, even shaping the narrative.
So it's not just about data security anymore. It's about
Information control.
interesting. And it's worth noting that Musk has been vocal about his own plans to create a rival social media platform.
Oh, yeah, he's been talking about that for a while now.
So maybe he sees an opportunity here to partner with TikTok or to use it as leverage in his own ventures.
It's definitely a possibility. And it just adds another layer of complexity to this whole situation.
It's like a game within a game within a game.
Exactly. And we're all just trying to figure out the rules.
Well, speaking of games and power plays, let's talk about those revoked security clearances.
Those 51 former national security officials,
Yeah, I mean, they weren't just random critics. They were part of the establishment.
the very establishment that Musk has openly challenged.
So is this a sign of Trump aligning himself with Musk's vision of disrupting traditional power structures?
It's a possibility we have to consider. It's like they're both on this mission to shake things up, to challenge the status quo.
And it's not just about domestic politics either. This could have implications for global alliances and the balance of power on the world stage.
Absolutely. This is about reshaping the world order.
Okay, well, let's shift gears again and talk about something that's been a hallmark of Trump's policies, immigration.
Right.
The shutdown of the CBP-1 app is a pretty stark signal that he's taking a hard-line approach.
It's a major departure from the Biden administration's efforts to manage the flow of migrants at the border.
Yeah, the app, while not perfect, provided a system for people to apply for asylum legally.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of uncertainty and anxiety about what happens next.
Absolutely. It's created a huge void.
And we've heard reports of families stranded in Mexico, their hopes dashed. What are the experts saying about the potential consequences of this shutdown
Well, there are concerns that it could lead to a surge in illegal crossings.
as people become desperate?
Exactly. And that could overwhelm Border Patrol resources, lead to more dangerous situations for migrants, including families with young children.
So it's a humanitarian crisis waiting to happen.
Potentially. And it seems like the administration is banking on deterrence as the solution.
But that didn't really work last time.
Right. It led to a lot of suffering, and it didn't really address the root causes of migration.
So what's the answer?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers. But it's clear that this is an area where Trump's policies are going to have a profound impact on people's lives.
And not in a good way.
It's a situation that demands our attention and our compassion.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's shift our focus now to something a bit more...
Cosmic.
You mean Trump's space ambitions?
Exactly. It seems like sending astronauts to Mars is no longer just a campaign promise. It's becoming a real policy objective.
Well, once again, we see the shadow of Elon Musk looming large.
It's like he's the unofficial space czar.
And his partnership with Trump on this issue could have far-reaching consequences.
It could jumpstart a new era of space exploration, with the U.S. taking the lead in the race to establish a human presence on Mars.
A bold vision.
It is, and one that captures the imagination.
But it also raises a lot of questions.
Hmm.
What are the costs, both financial and ethical, of such an ambitious undertaking?
Right. And what are the implications for international cooperation and competition in space?
It's like we're entering a new frontier.
In more ways than one?
And with Trump and Musk at the helm, it's anyone's guess where we'll end up.
Buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride.
Okay, well, let's bring our focus back to Earth for a moment, because there's one more aspect of Trump's second term that we need to address.
His rhetoric.
Exactly. His words have always had the power to provoke, to divide, to inspire. And it's clear that he's not going to shy away from using that power in his second term.
Even though he won the election, he's still harping on about the 2020 election being stolen. His speeches are filled with attacks on his opponents. He seems to enjoy going off script and stirring controversy.
It's like he thrives on the drama.
It's part of his brand. It's what his supporters love about him.
But it's also what his critics fear.
Exactly. They see it as a sign of instability, recklessness, even a disregard for democratic norms.
So the question is, will he be able to unite the country behind his vision for a second term? Or will his rhetoric further fuel the flames of division and polarization?
That's the big question.
Yeah.
And only time will tell.
Well, one thing's for sure, it's going to be an interesting 4 years.
You can say that again.
Well, we've spent this deep dive unpacking a lot from just the first day of Trump's second term inauguration spectacle, sweeping pardons, executive orders that reverse course on everything from climate change to TikTok.
No, we've only scratched the surface, I think, of the potential implications. What I find particularly fascinating is how all these seemingly disparate threads connect back to a central theme.
Oh, yeah.
Trump's determination to reshape the power dynamics, both domestically and globally.
It's like he's playing 3D chess.
Exactly. Making moves that ripple across multiple boards simultaneously.
But what does it all mean for, the average person?
Right. How are these policy shifts going to play out in their daily lives?
That's what I keep thinking about.
Well, if we look at the economic front, for example, those tariffs on Canada and Mexico,
Yeah.
they could translate into higher prices for consumers on everything from groceries to cars.
But a potential hit to the wallet.
Exactly. Even as the economy is still recovering from the pandemic and all the global instability.
This is like one step forward, 2 steps back.
And those costs could be compounded if a trade war erupts.
Right. Which seems likely.
And then on the social and political landscape, you've got Trump's pardons, his rhetoric.
Yeah.
It seems designed to further inflame those divisions.
It's like he wants to keep us fighting with each other.
It's a calculated strategy for sure.
Yeah.
And it's worked for him in the past.
He thrives on that polarization, right?
Absolutely. Creating that us versus them dynamic, it rallies his base, but it also alienates a significant portion of the population.
It's a dangerous game.
It is, and it's one that we've seen play out before with disastrous consequences.
And what about the global reaction to all this? I mean, we saw world leaders at the inauguration, but how are they going to respond to these policy shifts in the long term?
It's hard to say for sure. I think we'll likely see a mix of reactions.
Like what?
Well, some countries might try to appease Trump, hoping to avoid his wrath. Others might form new alliances, seeking strength in numbers to counter his America First agenda.
And then there are those who might see this as an opportunity.
To exploit the situation.
Right, to advance their own interests while the U.S. is focused inward.
Exactly. It's a recipe for instability on the global stage.
And then you have the wild card factor, Elon Musk.
Oh, yeah. He's the X factor in all of this.
His influence seems to be growing by the day.
He's a force to be reckoned with, for sure.
It's like they're both playing this high-stakes game.
And we're all just trying to figure out the rules as we go along.
So what stands out to you as the biggest takeaway from all this? What should people be paying attention to as these policies start to take effect?
I think the key is to look beyond the headlines.
Right, not just get caught up in the
Day-to-day drama.
But to really analyze
the underlying motivations.
Yeah, and the potential consequences
of these policy shifts. It's about understanding the big picture, the long-term trends, and the ways in which these decisions are going to shape the world we live in.
Because knowledge is power, right?
Absolutely. Especially in times like these.
The more informed we are, the better equipped we'll be to navigate the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead.
Exactly. Stay curious, stay engaged, and keep asking those tough questions.
That's what it means to be an informed citizen in a democracy.
And that's what the deep dive is all about.
Helping you make sense of a complex world.
Exactly.
So until next time, keep diving deep.